Hello, this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Talks number 9. I am Panos Kotzathanasis and I'm here with Adriana Rosati
Hi.
from UK and Don Anelli from San Diego, USA.
Los Angeles, but close enough. How's it going, everyone?
Close enough.
I'm closer to Los Angeles than San Diego, but close enough.
Okay. All right, so today we're gonna make a turn. We're gonna speak about a horror film from Indonesia, Impetigore by Joko Anwar. Probably one of the most famous, let's say, movies from the country in the latest few years, since the film actually was shot in Sundance, and it was also the official entry of Indonesia for this year Oscars, although it did not got shortlisted. And before we begin, I would also like to say that we have an interesting demographic film-wise today, because Adriana very rarely watches horror films. I watch some horror films, but not too many, and Don Anelli only watches horror films, so we're gonna examine the film from every perspective possible in terms of viewership. One last thing before we begin. Also, Impetigore is also a very interesting production, because there is one company from Indonesia, one from Korea, and one from the US involved. So it's a very interesting outcome. And also, Impetigore is like the flagship, let's say, of a recent surge of films from horror films from Indonesia that have been making a rather big impact all over the world, actually. Don, you want to tell us a bit about Indonesian horror films?
Yeah, for me, I personally believe that the start of the Indonesian wave started with Joko's previous film, Satan's Slaves. To me, that is, I still put that as like one of the benchmarks of not just modern Indonesian horror cinema, but Asian cinema in general. I would shortlist that as like one of the top 5, just even from specific Asian countries within the decade. Just absolutely stylish, impeccable, fantastic filmmaking, and just a absolutely incredible deliverer of scares and suspense. And I look at the way that the wave that sort of emerged from there with Timo Tjahjanto and Kimo Stamboel, each of them delivering films, with Timo delivering both of the May the Devil Take You films, which sort of evoke modern Evil Dead movies. They're basically Indonesia's answer to Evil Dead, for those that are unfamiliar. Very, very impressive films, lots of fast, dynamic camera work, lots of brutality, really, really fun stuff. Chemo's pretty much just a notch below him with his 2 films, Dread Out and the recent Queen of Black Magic. Again, both of those very stylish, very dynamically filmed, lots of impressive scares. Those, I would say, along with Joko, would be like the top 3, like the pinnacle of modern Indonesian cinema. But there's a couple of others that are just lurking beneath the surface that really need to, can also be discussed. Rizal Mantovani, he's done several impressive films with the 2 Kuntilianek films. Each of them are really worthwhile and quite enjoyable. Uk Budiando did a passable job with his film Fetus, which was his directorial debut, by the way. So not necessarily, genre breaking, but serviceable as a ghost story, just kind of fun, and definitely in that mindset if you're into that kind of mood. And lastly would be Alri Sayati with his film Sunyi, which I think goes under the title Death Whisper. If I'm not mistaken. I think that's the translation that they're going with for the international market. So that is a remake of the Korean film Whispering Corridors, if I'm not mistaken. It's either Whispering Corridors or Wishing Stairs. I get the 2 confused. But yeah, it's a remake of one of those films, and it's a really fun film. I really enjoy it. You know, again, high quality production work, lots of dynamic camera movements, fantastic ghost scares. Definitely keep an eye on that one when it comes out, because I'm really looking forward to that one.
So I guess we can say that, okay, the scepters of horror that used to be to Japan towards the previous decades, now it's moving more towards Indonesia and the other ASEAN countries in general, right, Don?
Right. For my own personal viewpoint, I look at the tiers of Asian filmmaking as still Japan and Korea, although I look at Japan for its legacy rather than current output. Current outputs kind of fallen a little more towards the indie straight-to-video scene. So if we're looking at current output, not necessarily so much, but if you look at their history, their legacy, Jigoku, Kwaidan, Ringu, Halsu, you know, Juwon, I think that's more than enough to keep them up there. But if you're looking at modern day, not as much. Although the current output of Indonesia, I really would consider placing them up there. Not necessarily in this as overtaking Korea, because Korea is still, I think, the top mark in terms of Asian horror cinema. But in terms of, I would say, at the top of the line, Indonesia is definitely making a case to be up there, because I still have Indonesia like in the second tier with Thailand and Hong Kong / China, because I think their output's still pretty prolific and predominant enough to keep them out there. But Indonesia is making a case to rise to the top and join South Korea and Japan.
Okay. Adriana, you want to add anything? Have you seen any other Indonesian horror films apart from, did you watch Satan's Slaves?
No, but now that I've seen Impetigore, I really would like to see Satan's Slaves. Definitely. Yeah. I really enjoy this and I like his style. So yeah, I will look. You know, I'm not an expert of by any means of horror, but I enjoy them, and yeah, I enjoy watching every now and then. So yeah.
Okay. So Don, you can also tell us a bit about what Impetigore is about, the synopsis of the film.
Okay, no problem. So Maya works at a toll booth in Jakarta until one night when she is attacked by a strange man with a machete, who seems to know a lot about her past. The girl barely survives, but starts researching about what the man said to her, leading to an investigation that causes her to arrive at a rural village in the woods where she was born by parents she's never met. Thinking that there might be a chance to make some money by selling a house that could belong to her, she ventures to the village with her best friend Denis. The inhabitants seem strange, but are not exactly bad, yet the girls soon realize that there are not any children around. A bit later, they stumble upon a local chieftain, a mysterious Wayang puppet master, and her enforcer, Ki Saptati, and start discovering the terrible past of the village. At the same time, the villagers discover Maya's past, and things escalate from there.
Okay. So one of the characteristics of the film and Indonesian horror in general is most of those films have a very local flavor. Like you can see a lot of elements that are particular to Indonesia. And one of the first that you can see in this film is this Wayang concept, which is a kind of shadow puppet drama. The description is like it says that it's classic Japanese puppet drama that uses the shadows thrown by puppets manipulated by rods against a translucent screen lit from behind. Supposedly it is usually presented in important occasions as birthdays and anniversaries. And it has a rather mystical connotation. It's one of the first things, one of the important elements of the film. Adriana, what did you think about this part of the film?
Yeah, well, the shadow puppets are really characteristic of Indonesia and Java, where the film is set. In Java, apparently, they are even more mystical, and the characters are more demons-like than the normal Indonesian puppets. And so it's very atmospheric, this thing. And also in the film, there are something horrific that will happen on the other side of the screen. And I think that is really, yeah, atmospheric and very, very powerful. Really, the scenes of the puppet show with what happened, they're really, really cool. They're really strong, and I really enjoy that. Very powerful. And also, I think that these scenes have a very strong symbolic significance, because there is the public, the villagers are on one side of the screen, and something happened on the other side of the screen, and it's not clear what happened, and they can't see the truth because something else actually happened on the other side of the screen, and they may believe something. So I think it's a beautiful choice to use this. Also, I had the chance and the privilege, I would say, because it was a very fun interview. I had the chance to interview the director, and he explained that this puppet is the shadow puppet for him are a very they have a very strong spooky meaning for him. It's one of his phobia, because when he was a child, his brother told him that the puppets, they're usually made of cow skin or leather, they were made of human skin. Obviously, it was a joke of a silly oldest brother, but he got so scared of these things that he had nightmares forever about these puppets, these wicked puppets made of skin. So that's a very personal thing.
Don, what did you think about this part in the film, the shadow puppetry?
It's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, for me, I'm not really that familiar with Indonesian culture, so I don't have like the backstory or the historical connections that you guys would have with it. But the scene itself, not just necessarily to, it just looks visually impressive. The way that you see the screen and you see like the dancing and the imagery behind it, and you get like, it's sort of like a marionette show, like for me, like as a comparison piece, like you see a group of kids laid out around it, and you get like the idea that there's sort of like a history or a moral lesson to what's going on. I got sort of like that idea from it kind of easily just by visually seeing it. So it's not necessarily one of those where I don't completely know what's going on, but I can still grasp the situation. But then, like the sort of dark turn it takes at the end, the resulting aftermath is probably one of my favorites. And just seeing like a localized take on something, like again the comparison between the marionette puppets and the small little puppet shows that I would be more familiar with, it really adds like a unique flavor to it, to where you're able to connect to the process and you're able to get an idea of what he's trying to convey in a foreign culture without the language barrier. So it's really an immersive aspect of the film, to where you can see the fate of the village and where it all comes from, because it's one of the key scenes in the film, and it draws out where the curse comes from, essentially. So yeah, to me, it's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
And I have to say that this was a bit strange and kind of funny for me personally, because we also have this kind of shadow theater in Greece with puppets, but it's mostly humoristic and about the poor Greek who always has things happen to him. And so watching this thing turn into something horrific with such meaning as in Impetigore was a bit funny for me, but it's strange how these similarities are really strange when you watch them on film, Okay, so this aspect of the puppetry is one of the elements that creates this great horrific atmosphere that Impetigore showcases, which is one of the great assets in Joko Anwar's directorial efforts in general. It's also in Satan Slaves that his films are horrific due to their atmosphere, because he doesn't use this regular concept of the jump scares. In Impetigore, there are some jump scares in the beginning, but they are kind of like mocking the whole concept. They're not there to scare you. They are more to make you laugh about how these things are implemented.
Yeah.
So, Adriana?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a very big fan of jump scares, so yeah, I appreciate the the film is based on something else, and yeah, it's true. At the beginning, there are a couple of, but they are a bit tongue in cheek. They are a bit funny actually, because they build up the atmosphere with the music, and then it's nothing. But is yeah, the atmosphere is great, and the atmosphere is been created with the location that is amazing, and also with the camera work and the filming, the lighting, and also the sound, the sound design is really good, I think. And it's all worked together to create this atmosphere. And also as I said, the location, this secluded village, which I guess is not a particular original topic for a horror movie, but is very well rendered. He said that they film in 5 different locations to create this village. He had a very clear idea what he wanted. They had a sketch of everything, of this village, but it's been filmed in different places to create the atmosphere. And also the lighting. There is lots of natural light in this film, and they create a different atmosphere. Like the night is really dark, and it's got these tones of sienna color and reddish, bloodish color. Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess it's obviously make people get scared with jump scares. It's the easy way, but creating an atmosphere that communicates a horror as a whole is much more difficult, I guess. Don?
Yeah, it's one of the few things that I really admire about Joko's style is, especially with like I said, Satan's Slaves, where it was a little bit more geared towards delivering jump scares, but it still had an impeccably stylish and incredibly slick atmosphere. And Impetigore carries a lot of that same element. You know, like you guys said, the jump scares are more just like comedic jokes to end a sequence on, like, you know, them exploring the haunted house and then thinking something's off in the distance, and then, oh, oops, I just bumped into that. Like stuff like that, you know, it kind of, you know, it generates a little bit of attention, but then it kind of just like dissipates it with a jump scare. But when you look at the way that he films the village and the way that you film like the gradual reveal of the curse and all of the various aspects with the villagers, it's a lot more in tone with folk horror, and a lot of the way that those kinds of aspects are integrated into a film where it's slow burn, it's creepy ideas and creepy themes, but it's not necessarily just overt shocks. And that, you know, it plays to the film's strength because it's not necessarily about that. It's not, you know, something jumping out of the camera trying to scare you. It's unnerving and it's tension filled, but it's not, you know, it's trying to get to you, but that it's doing so because it's the atmosphere, the idea of what's going on, and being aware of or being unaware of what's happening, and doing that with the way that he films it's really impressive. And it's one of the, you know, it's probably like the thing I like the most about it. And yeah, it's probably like one of the best features is that it knows to deliver scares as jokes, but then let the idea, the imagery, and the theming provide the unnerving elements of the film.
And yeah, please,
Can I
Adriana.
add something? No, I wanted to add I think the atmosphere is also created by the way the script, the film set up the two characters, the two female characters, Maya and Dini, the two friends at the beginning, which is they have a great chemistry between the two of them, and the chit chat, the whole first third, let's say, of the film is very natural, and they great friends, and they sort of suck you in to with them. And then, but then when they arrive at the village, everything starts to get wrong. That create the contrast, I think, that also contribute to the horrific atmosphere.
And yeah, I guess because you also you mentioned the village, which was impressive location scouting for the crew of Joko Anwar, because the village looks astonishing. It's obviously an actual village. This is not an artificial set. And in the interview you had with him, he mentioned that this was actually an early Dutch plantation site which has been abandoned, and then it became a village which is actually pretty much isolated in the middle of the jungle. It was a real discovery, and that's very important for the whole atmosphere of the film. Sorry, please, Adriana. Okay.
No, I was saying, the confirmed, it's a real secluded village, yeah, that they found, yeah.
Yeah, Don, how would you say the location of the village impacts the whole movie?
Yeah, well, like I said, the village is pretty much like, it goes hand in hand with like the folklore thing I was saying earlier, because that's a lot of where folklore comes from, is getting people away from modernizations and like like, I'm trying to think of like the appropriate term, but like a civilized world. So, you know, you introduce something to where that it slowly emerges where the threat's coming from. And being in this kind of a village, it just sort of just feels like a natural extension of where they're coming from. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like a curse that would arise in like the middle of a downtown high rise or something like that, where it feels like this is something that happens out into the wilderness, out in the deep of the jungle, away from a modern society. And I really like that. I like the way, it's a simple life. It's simple villagers. It's, people just trying to make a living, and you have this curse on top of it. And that's like a lot of where folklore comes from. And it's one of the, it really, I think it shines really brightly in the film with the way that it looks. It feels just like hand in hand, and it's like a cohesive aspect of the film. Like, you wouldn't even realize it without somebody saying that.
And okay, regarding the overall atmosphere, as we mentioned before, so the film starts building this horrific atmosphere. You get a sense of creepiness that something bad will happen. This sense becomes even more intense when the story comes into the village. But the thought, this feeling that something bad will happen actually happens in like the most brutal terms, because the film becomes like a slasher towards the end, which is like this promise that Joko Anwar built from the beginning is delivered in the most in-your-face style, let's say, which is also an impressive part of his direction. Adriana?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to add that this film has got a very impressive opening. There is something quite horrific and quick that happened at the opening, but then the tone change, and yes, go back to normal. Then when they arrive at the village, the film stalls a bit. But it sort of build up a sense of menace. But then, yes, the end, it's a crescendo of gore and slash and also there is one thing that it left me a bit so. There is the big explainer at the begin, at the end, the vision that she has that sort of explain the whole story. I thought there was a touch too much in one go as an explain. I mean, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don, what did you think about this part, the transition from horror to slasher?
I love it. I'm a huge slasher fan, so I love a lot of that. Her trying to escape from the village and seeing all of the various, figures running after her, trying to chase her. It's a lot of fun. Like there's a few instances that it's actually kind of clever. The idea of using her cell phone to sort of trick them and lure them away from her, it's really impressive. I like that. I'm an unrepentant gorehound. There's not enough for me. I've never seen anything that's actually made me feel disgusted or turned off. So there's not enough for it. I pile it on. I want all of it. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I do agree with Adriana. I do think that the info dump with the curse at the end does feel a little much. It does kind of feel like it's shoehorned in to give it an explanation, and it doesn't necessarily come off as integrated cohesively with the way that the rest of the film had been playing out. So I do agree with her on that. The other, like I said, the one other big issue I had with it is the lack of explanation as to why the villagers are still there to begin with. Like, why are they still in the village? Like, whether they're like supernaturally bound to be there because they were born there, that they can't leave, like to go out into the city. Like everybody has to stay there and everybody has to fall in line with the curse. Like, there's no reason as to why anybody could leave. So that was an area that I kind of had an issue with. But yeah, for the most part, I don't have too many problems with it. But yeah, the action at the end, it's a fun chase. I really enjoy it. It's probably up there with the Shadow Puppet flashback as one of my favorite.
Okay.
So I'm a huge fan of that.
But in general, in my opinion, these scenes are quite violent, but there is also like a comic style in them. Like they're not splatter, let's say, they're not chilling. There is like kind of, let's say, they are very brutal to say that they are humoristic, but there is this thing, the violence, the over-the-top violence that we usually see in comics, not the ones we see, let's say, in Japanese splatters and people, eating each other's brains with spoons or something. This is more, let's say, kind of artistic, don't you think, Don?
Right, yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of the modern Indonesian gore films tend to take its influence from Evil Dead. So to me, that's the sort of avenue where it goes from. Not the second one, but the first one, where it's played serious and straight, but it's not like cartoonish and over the top. It's just brutal incidents that happen to a human body that require huge blood loss to occur because of how graphic the concept is. And that's where this one really plays off, is that it's a brutal incident. It's not humorous, it's not goofy or silly, but it's something brutal and shocking that happens to a human body, and it's something that's going to have a huge spray or a huge geyser emerge from a human body because of that. So that's sort of of the
I was losing you a bit, Don. Okay. Okay. Well, Adriana, were you, let's say, appalled or disgusted by the slasher part in the film?
No, at all. Actually, I enjoyed very much. There are, yeah, you're right. It's a big comic book style, but no, yeah, I am not very usually impressed by gore. I like it. I like very much when the mom hung to dry something there. I'm not gonna say, and I thought that was very funny. I was like, yes. And then also there are some other touch, a bit of humor. I think there is without revealing too much, there is a character that arrives towards the end that is the one they usually in other films would save maybe the situation because it's an external, and they just kill it immediately. And I thought it was quite funny as well. It's a way to, to say, no, this is not that kind of film. Also, I want to add to what Don was saying before about the villagers, why they were still there. I think that the film has got this feeling of this, you want to convey the feeling of this society that is sort of stuck into a sort of moral code. It's a very strict society in Indonesia, especially about the superior and the parents. You can discuss with parents. You have to obey, and it's the whole village was a bit like that. This the head key Saptadi. And the mom, there is this feeling that nobody discuss anything, they just do what they need to do. So I think that was the feeling that the film wanted to the villagers be.
Yeah, in general, I think that Joko Anwar's, what you said before, Joko Anwar's sense of humor is incredible, and the way he implements it into his films in moments that you don't expect at all, I think it's one of the best aspects of him as a filmmaker in general, and you can also see it in this film, which in general doesn't feel like a film that will have moments of humor, but it actually does, and they are quite funny because they are so sudden and absurd, let's say. And also the other great aspect of the film is that Joko Anwar manages to make some social comments through all this horrific atmosphere, which is it's something I feel is because horror genre films tended to be too similar. Like before, let's say, I think this is what happened to J-horror actually, that a lot of films were too similar and you could not see new ideas. But modern horror films, in particular the ones from Indonesia and other ASEAN countries, have managed to include this social commentary in the film. Like in this case, it's actually what Don described a bit before, why they don't leave the village. I felt that this was actually a comment about this collective instinct that somehow they are all bound together by an idea of what happened in the past and who they are, and this does not allow them to go away. I don't know if you, Don, did you see the social commentary in the film, this part?
Yeah, I get where he's coming from. I like the idea of essentially, for lack of a better term, all for one, one for all, sticking with your family, and where you come from is where you're supposed to be. Maybe it's just my American sensibilities, but I would rather a film touch on that and at least maybe mention it, just to sort of put the piece together that that's where I'm supposed to go. You know, like I said, that's just probably for me, you know, being an American compared to you guys, with the way your sensibilities are, how you watch films. So that could probably be an issue. But overall, yeah, I do get where he's coming from with the sense of, you know, being together as the sort of, you know, to be with your family, to be with, you know, those around you is where you're supposed to be, your lot in life. And, you know, not necessarily rise above it, but to sort of just stay there as and be together. Like, yeah, I get where he's coming from and how that would be important to people, but you know, like I said, maybe it's just me and my sensibilities, you know. uh, yeah, at least let it, if you're not going to mention it, at least put it in there to where I can at least connect the dots and say, oh, okay, that's where he's going with it. Okay, yeah, I get it. You know, I can do the mental math and put the pieces together, but I would at least like to be able to say, okay, I'm supposed to put this and this together. That would be, you know, like where you're going with it. So, you know, it could just be me. It could just, you know, be the way I approach a film. So yeah, I would probably just leave it at that for now.
Okay, okay, Adriana, what did you think about the social comments in the film, the philosophical essentially?
Well, I could see something in a way that I mean Indonesia is a country that had a very troubled past, and is also a very fragmented country till now. Still now, there are still you know independentist movements that troubled the country, and I think that this is why reflected in the film because of there is a sort of a collective uh, guilt feeling that what happened in the past is sort of shaping what people is doing now, even without knowing or without having done anything. You know, it's like a course in a way, and also. This secluded village and this you know Maya and Dini, they arrive in this village, they are there is this feeling of being foreigner in your own country in a way, um, and also there is a little things the starting point as well, as the director said, he sometimes take the inspiration by news and social things, and there was these things of the tool booth operator. They are it was in the news in Indonesia that lots of tool booth operator were let off because because they were substituted with machinery, and so there were lots of people without work, and so you know, if we want to do a bit of a symbolism on steroids, you could see Maya as going towards the unknown after this uh, being you know, this bad experience with the tool books. But yeah.
Okay, and now that you mentioned her, I guess we also have to speak a bit about the acting with the Tara Basro is once more great. She's like, she has acted in a lot of Joko Anwar's films and they seem to have a great chemistry together. She's very convincing in all the aspects of the film, like from the beginning with the Tollbooth incident and then the way she's like, she's scared and resolved and cunning, and everything she exhibits on screen is quite impressive. But Don, what did you think of her acting?
Yeah, I've really become a huge fan of her, just being with a lot of Joko's films. I do like what she said. She's a very convincing and very like sympathetic kind of a character, where she's sort of like the naive individual that you know, her naivete really comes across kind of well. In that, based on the initial Toll Booth incident and where that leads them, you know, her search through the village, and you know, her and Denis come together and they have a fun little relationship together. They're kind of, you know, like the joking best friends who are by each other's side. You know, they'll maybe rag on each other a few times just to like get under each other's skin or like let off tension, but then it's never malicious. It's always like good natured. You know, you give what you get. They throw it back at each other, and it just sort of carries on. They forget about it and move on. But like, you know, as soon as it comes to a point where she has to take charge and she has to take action, it's quite capable. It's quite natural. She looks pretty capable in the role. She comes across as somebody that can go into action and take charge if necessary, but you know, her innocence and naivete comes across really well when she needs to portray that kind of a character. So I do like her. She's becoming one of my favorites, especially from like her collaborations and stuff.
Adriana?
Yeah. Although I don't know her very much because I haven't seen the other films of the director, and I know that she's been working with him all the time. Yeah, but I really enjoyed her in this movie. I thought that she was very natural and very spontaneous, and again, as I said before, great, and Don as well, great chemistry with the other girl. The actress is Marissa Anita, the other Dini. And also apparently the director Joko Anwar has got a way to achieve this natural feeling, because he sort of create for the actors to create the whole character since is born to the film moment, and so they have to learn and become that character, and so they and he leave them chat away, and so that you can see that probably happened with the two girls and the two women, and so yeah, they're very natural. But yeah, and then then she's very good when the action starts. The acting is a bit less casual, but very good. And also, yeah, about her. Also, I enjoy very much the other protagonist, Ario, Bayu as well, which I didn't I didn't really like the first time I watched the movie, but then on the second rewatch, I think that it was perfect with this with this expression of someone that doesn't even know why he's there, because it's actually his character. So yeah, I thought he was perfect as well.
Yeah. I also liked Ario Bayu acting a lot. It's this duality that he exhibits on the film, that he seems scary. He has this persona that makes you scared. You can understand that he is someone capable of violence, and he is who he is in the film. But also you can see that there is a sense of self-conflict in him, which he also exhibits it quite eloquently in the film, a testament to his acting. Don, what did you think of Ario Bayu?
Oh yeah, I really like him. He's another one that I've sort of become familiar with just based on a lot of just a lot of the collaborations between Joko and him. He seems like a really competent sort of like village authority. You kind of get the sense that he's not necessarily like the vindictive ruler, but he has to deal with things that he's not necessarily comfortable.
Strike again.
Like the turn that he gets towards the end, where you start getting the sense that he's not necessarily as evil as you think he has been. I do like the way he is in the first half, where he's sort of like beyond the shadows, just manipulating everybody, and he's the one that has to send everybody to do the dirty work because he doesn't want to do it himself, but yet he's capable of doing it if he has to. Yeah, I really like him. He's probably, he's like another guy that I've really sort of grown into just based on the collaborations with Joko together. So yeah, again, you could say I'm a fan of his work.
I thought that he was the his character is the real tragic hero of this movie, because he is the man that is trapped into a destiny that someone else has been shaping for him and being created for him. And he is also cursed that he can't even remember, so he can't even know why he's at that point, but he carry on his role. Yeah, it's a complex character. It's really good. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess both his and Tara Basro's acting are also a testament to how layered this film is. Joko Anwar's horror films are multi-level narratives, essentially, which is a unique thing for horror. I mean, horror films are not so frequently, at least, they don't exhibit so much depth in general, but Joko manages to combine both depth and a great horror slasher film like no one else. I think he's like a unique director in that regard. So I guess that's it. Don, would you like to add anything before we close?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what he does next. He's, like I said, he's probably like at least at the very top of where Indonesian horror is at the moment. So overall, even if he doesn't necessarily stay in Indonesia, which I'm really hoping for because I want American audiences to see his work, he's definitely a director on my radar. Even as a writer, because I know he wrote Queen of Black Magic, so he's still got the chops to be a dynamic writer, even if he's not directing it. But overall, I'm a huge fan. I'm rapidly becoming a huge fan, and I really want more people to see his work.
Well, Adriana, anything before we close?
Well, what can I add? I can say that I really enjoyed this movie. I'm looking forward to do a retrospective, a personal retrospective, and watch all his other movies backward. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. But I also have to say that he's one of my favorite directors since I first saw him in Five Flavors Festival. I don't remember, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago with Copy of My Mind. And I've seen, I think, all of his feature films, and like 90% of them are truly great. But now also maybe it will be worth mentioning that he has started a kind of cinematic universe in Indonesia with Indonesian superheroes. Gundala was the first film in that universe, but a lot more are coming. So it will be interesting to watch how he does with that. I'm sure he will succeed because he has got the general filmmaking. He's quite capable in that. So I guess that's it in general. If you like this discussion and more of the videos that we shoot, you can also subscribe to our channel. We are doing one of these every week. Not sure what we're going to do next week. Something strange again. So this is it for this week. So from me, Panos Kotzathanasis, Adriana, and Don, you can say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Okay. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, and see you next week. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.